welcome back to the Feed Me Sports Podcast. We are coming at you with our NFL Draft recap after last week's NFL Draft episode. We're also talking about WWE Payback, Raw, SmackDown, the NHL Draft Lottery, NBA playoffs, and baseball. We're covering pretty much every sport, whether it's scripted or non-scripted. We only don't cover the UFC because I have never actually watched a fight in my entire life. My name is Alec Roman. I'll be the one hosting this podcast, this episode, as now we're tossing it back and forth. Joining me today is my co-host, of course, Alexander Birch. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. Allergies aren't kicking my ass like they were over the weekend, so I'm doing much better.
You're feeling all right. We are once again missing our friend Lewis Schaefer. I'm pretty sure he's just actually sending in his 2 weeks at this point. But we have received word that he is attending to Noah Syndergaard's arm. He is the head doctor on that case, and his premier responsibility is just to cry over it with his Mets towel and pray that the crying tears heals it like Pikachu in Pokemon 2000. That's his.
Well, I don't know if you would want Lewis Schaefer as the head doctor on any case, even the sniffles. Even the sniffles, really I wouldn't want him.
I wouldn't really call crying a medical procedure, but if it worked for Pikachu turning Ash from stone to a real human again, it may work for Syndergaard's arm.
I think Lewis will take anything to have Thor in that pitching rotation. I don't know. I mean, I just don't know if you would want Lewis. I'd rather have the Sixers medical staff than have Lewis Schaefer attend to my injuries.
I'm going to drive down to DeSales and take his hammer away and just say, like, very calmly, you'll get this back when he's healthy. And just
I think that's fair. Well, it's you can't really pull up the hammer without a lat muscle.
That's true.
With the torn lat muscle.
You can't do it. Not even if he's worthy. So we'll start right off with the thing that we left off with last week, the NFL draft. I want to think, we had talked about last week, and I was very skeptical about there being a lot of moves, and me and you had talked about it at length over the weekend. That most of the moves that happened were in reaction to the Bears actually making that jump.
Yeah, which still confuses me, but
So we'll going off what confused you. I want to say, like, were there picks, whether people were trading up or trading down or taking different people that you just didn't see coming? Were there picks that just shocked you, where you were sitting at home just thinking, "Oh crap, I don't know why that person went so high"?
I think the obvious one is obviously the Bears moving one spot and giving up 3 more picks to get Trubisky. I guess that either one, Mike Glennon being on the 1-year deal, it's not guaranteed they can get out of it. Have Trubisky sit for a year and then come in 2018. But the one move I think, not to just join the cliche answer and diss on the Bears. I think the one that kind of shocked me was the Bengals taking John Ross at 10. I thought that they would go defense, especially because, you and I had talked when we were doing our, division breakdown, what each team needed to do. They needed to get that bite back in their defense. But, the more I thought about it, because it surprised the hell out of me draft night that they would turn their attention to wide receiver when they had bigger needs on the O-line and pass rush and linebacker. But, when you look at it, A.J. Green being one of the top 5 receivers in the league, John Ross being a burner and a speed threat, it definitely will help Cincinnati's pass game. But, the fact that 3 wide receivers went in the top 10 alone, I think, shocked me the most.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I did not see any – I had predicted that Mike Williams and Corey Davis might go top 10. I had kind of pegged Ross for much later on. Because I thought he's a one-trick pony to me, and maybe he'll prove me wrong. Maybe I'm wrong about him, but he just strikes me as a guy who's out there to burn people and doesn't really have the hands or the creative ability just yet. He seemed more like a project than what the Bengals did. But
I think they, it makes sense for them because look at how great Cincinnati's offense was with A.J. Green, Marvin Jones, and Mohamed Sanu. I mean, and Tyler Eifert. Andy Dalton was able to spread the ball around. It wasn't just one guy getting, 20, 30 looks a game, and then they lost them. You saw how much Cincinnati's offense suffered. But I thought that they should have gone defense, preferably linebacker, and then maybe if they really, really had their eyes on him, trade back into the first round. But, I did not see the Chargers going Mike Williams. Again, I thought that they would address defense with their pick, but really the top 10 I think was the most surprising. I was not surprised to see the Chiefs move up for Patrick Mahomes because they had been linked to him all week, and with rumors circulating that the Cardinals had their eye on him. I mean, I give credit to Andy Reid. He'd rather not risk Mahomes going to Arizona, so he made the play to move up and grab him to be the quarterback of the future. And again, Houston moving up to take Deshaun Watson. I mean, what's the one thing that Houston's been missing for the last couple of years besides having?
I think it's all reactionary to Trubisky goes at 2 when everyone thought maybe Trubisky goes at 12.
I think it's reactionary too because Trubisky goes at 2 and the Bears make the move, so then it was panic. God,
it's immediate panic. Everyone get whoever you can.
Yeah, is everybody start grabbing for the quarterback? So, but those moves didn't surprise me, and I think that when you talk about the Chiefs and the Texans, it's going to pay off in big dividends for them.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that shocked me the most coming out of that first round, also in that top 10, was San Francisco actually trading away that pick. Something that didn't, everyone likes to say, oh, the Bears traded up and they gave away so much. I honestly didn't see San Fran moving out of that spot just because there was such premier talent you could grab at number 2. I mean, obviously everyone kind of assumed Garrett was gone and there was no chance you were getting him. But for the 49ers, who really didn't have a lot, managed to move back into some pretty advantageous spots and grab some great playmakers.
They moved back. Yeah, I mean, they moved back one spot. Get Solomon Thomas, who I think, other than Garrett, is going to be one of the better defensive ends. And then they pick up another pick in the first round, get Reuben Foster, who fell. And like you said, they were able to add more draft capital. And, for a team that really needed an infusion of draft picks,
Yeah.
I give John Lynch a lot of credit.
It goes back to what we said last week. You're looking for that perfect offer. You're going through your trade finder and you see that one golden thing. And I don't think anyone saw the Bears giving up so much for one spot.
I mean, just for one spot, you give up that pick plus 3 more. I mean, it threw me off because were you really that in love with Trubisky, or were you just worried that San Fran was going to grab him at 2? Well, I think that's really what it comes down to is, the Bears could have stayed at 3, and I still think they would have gotten Trubisky because they could have been there. I believe the Niners were going to go defense at number 2 regardless. I think the whole Trubisky to San Fran was a smokescreen, and kudos to John Lynch, the first-year GM out in San Fran. He probably created the smokescreen. Chicago panicked, gave them, what they wanted, and here they are with 2 stud defensive talents in the first round, and they get more picks out of it.
Yeah, hats off to their GM because he blows more smoke than an Undertaker WrestleMania entrance. Because, I mean,
that's a lot of smoke, man. A lot of smoke.
For a team that's not even looking for a quarterback at number 2, and you're like, we might do it, you don't know. And then just to get all that stuff back in return, so just so you can turn around and go, yeah, we weren't even thinking about it, dumbass.
We just moved back one spot. It's like, because I thought, and maybe this is just because this draft thing was screwed up, I thought the Bears were picking 2 and 3. So it kind of made sense to me at first, like when I saw that, oh, wow, okay, they get 3. Maybe they walk away with 2 defensive players here, and, they really bolster the defense. But then it comes in, it's like, no, San Fran's picking 3, and it's like, well, what the fuck are you moving one spot for? Like, and giving up 4 picks more in the process.
Yeah, I don't get it. But whatever they want to say, like whatever their rationale was,
it's not my team, so more power to the Bears.
I can't judge it until the records come out for next year, how many games you won and how many games you lost. I can't judge it until then. So we'll talk about some of the teams that got A grades from Sports Illustrated as they released their gradings for every single team this past week. So there's a lot of teams that got A's. A lot of teams I didn't really. I thought like A's were going to be given out at a premium. They really weren't. Failing grades were given out at a great premium. So we'll talk about some teams that got A's. The Cardinals, Ravens, Bills, Bengals, Browns, Broncos, Texans, Colts, Chargers, Niners, and Redskins all got A grades. And I see it. I see a lot of these teams. I mean, the Niners we just talked about with their getting more trade capital. The Chargers got Mike Williams. That's a great weapon. The Colts got Malik Hooker for their defense. Finally get someone else back there to help. The Texans got their quarterback. The Broncos managed to fix their line. The Redskins got 2 steals in getting Jonathan Allen way down in the draft. I mean, he dropped into their laps, and they were just, okay, cool, yeah, fine. The Browns, I mean, you can't
3 first-round picks.
3 first-round picks. They win. I'm sorry. I know the Browns are a long way from being a playoff team, but that's not a bad way to start the climb back.
Yeah. No, not at all.
The Bengals we talked about. I mean, I like it. We had said the Bengals need defense, but again, like you had said.
I'm confused by that because I think their second-round pick of Joe Mixon, and I'm not even going to bring up the conversation we had last week on all the red flags, but I think the selection of him creates more confusion because remember they have Jeremy Hill and Giovanni Bernard already on the roster.
Well, I mean, maybe this is a move to trade away one of those other guys.
It would have to be because I don't see how you can keep 3 running backs of that pedigree happy with touches. I mean, Mixon, if I'm just talking about the football player, is a good player and demands at least 15 to 20 touches a game. Gio Bernard, again, 15, 20 touches a game. And Jeremy Hill, while he had some injuries last year, again, that's another guy I would give 15 to 20 touches. I mean, you're going to have, let's just average it out, 60 run plays. I mean, That's great in theory, but for a team that is really weak on the O-line, I just don't see that. I mean, I give the Bengals maybe a B-, but that might be the one team on the list where I would kind of say A's probably not the best to go.
If they manage to take a Jeremy Hill, who's had injury concerns, as you said, and say, hey, listen, if you don't beat out this kid Joe Mixon for the rest of your contract, you're getting traded. And, I mean, that adds either makes Jeremy Hill a much better player, and you could either move Mixon later on for a defensive piece, or you can move Hill for a defensive piece, which I think kind of gives them that A grade because, yes, they didn't address the immediate needs of their team, but they did get capital, and they got, things they can give to other teams like they have in McCarron and like they would now have on a running back. And I think a lot of teams that are looking for like you said, a consistent 15 to 20 touch back that would be willing to give up something to get that player. So maybe it does give them some leverage going into kind of the veterancy stages of free agency.
I mean,
where we see older guys start to go.
Right, and I think you look at it maybe now they're looking. The Bengals are looking at it as now it's like open competition. So we're not going to anoint because the whole thing with the Bengals is Gio Bernard and Jeremy Hill were in a timeshare. I mean, Gio Bernard's kind of your pass catching back, where Jeremy Hill's the ground and pound. So I guess they had to rationalize this as we're going to create some open competition. Take pressure off of Andy Dalton. We want to pound the ball, chew the clock. I guess that's how I would think that they would look at it. But I think the one thing that for me with the Bengals is they needed to address O-line. And I think they took 1 offensive lineman and they lost like 3 in free agency. So I think that's why I give them a B. I haven't done a draft grade. I was actually planning on doing one for the site. But right now, in my mind, it's a B because, Andy Dalton can only go so far. And, they did a good job adding some pieces to the defense, but Andy Dalton's only going to go so far with a patchwork offensive line.
Yeah, but again, maybe Jeremy Hill gets traded. He gets traded for a defensive piece, and Joe Mixon works out. So I can't really – I mean, I think that's just my rationale for it. Maybe that's why they gave it to him. They've really kind of rebuilt that offense, and now they can go into the rest of free agency getting some veteran players on that defense. Maybe not that's going to change that defense for life, but is going to add that spark to it. So maybe next year's draft is all about getting that defense.
Yeah, I mean, defense, I think they did a good job with, but I think my one big concern for the Bengals this year and especially next year and going forward is, they need to address that offensive line. I just don't, they lost 2 or 3 players. Trying to think, they lost Whitworth to the Rams, Hitler to the Browns, and I believe they lost another guard. I can't think of the name. But when you lose 3 offensive linemen, productive offensive linemen, I mean, and you only draft 1, I mean, that's kind of concerning to me, especially when, your team is predicated on protecting your franchise quarterback so he can get it to the weapons that you have.
Yeah, or maybe, there's also those undrafted free agents out there, so maybe they thought they liked a few guys out there that they could pick up for cheap.
Very true, very true.
So, and an offensive lineman, offensive lineman, not to offend any offensive lineman, but it's a position where it's kind of best fit, not exactly best elite talent. We've seen some elite talent like Luke Jokel fail in the NFL because they're just not in the right setup.
And you move them from left tackle to right guard to left guard. I mean, there's no consistency.
Right, but it's put him in the right system when he was drafted, and he becomes a top talent, offensive lineman. And we've seen guys who go undrafted to be some of the best offensive linemen in the league. So, maybe that's where they're going with that one. But some of the other teams, the Ravens, really fixed their defense. They got Marlon Humphrey.
Yeah, they for me get an
Bowser.
A+. Yeah, they get an A+ for me because I really thought that they needed a wide receiver with that first pick. Given that it's really Mike Wallace and Brashad Perriman who can't stay healthy. I thought maybe you get Flacco, a playmaker, but you walk away with Marlon Humphrey, Tyus Bowser, and Tim Williams on a defense that's already top 10, top 12. I mean, Ozzie Newsome just does a great job with that team. And he always walks away with stud talent in the draft. I mean, A+. You get 3 top defensive players on a defense, like I said, that's already as good as it is. The Ravens can have proven at 2011.
Good for you.
Yeah, good for you. 2011, 2001. They win Super Bowls with defense, and they're just going to keep adding to the defense.
And then the last team, the Cardinals adding in Hassan Reddick and Budda Baker. To add, and you're already going to have a defense that has Buchanan and Matthew. You want to add more guys that can, drop into zone and kind of give that team the extra pressure it needs so they can send more guys in the pass rush. Never a bad idea. They got, a freak of speed in TJ Logan pretty late. And they got Dorian Johnson and Will Holden to kind of, keep an aging Carson Palmer on his feet. So I think they also get, for me, at least an A+, because they didn't get any elite playmakers besides Reddick. You're really, they didn't get any elite talent, but they addressed holes, they fixed positions, and they put themselves in a place where they can win that division again.
Yeah, I think, they definitely added a lot of really great talent to a roster that was already good but kind of just underachieved last year. The thing for me with the Cardinals going forward is now, Carson Palmer's going to be 38. So you need to turn your attention to finding, his replacement. And that's kind of why I was a little shocked that they didn't grab a quarterback late, like a Davis Webb or Nathan Peterman or any of those guys. They, I guess, feel that Carson Palmer maybe has a year or two left. But, with that team, I think you really want to look at who they're going to turn their attention to be the heir to Carson Palmer.
Yeah, and that could be next year's draft. Carson Palmer has already said he's playing this year.
Sure. Yeah.
So, if you want to say maybe that's next year's draft, maybe you trade up in next year's draft to grab him, to grab that replacement. That could always be their plan. So, just from this year, go looking into this coming season, they're set up in a pretty nice spot with the Seahawks and Packers. With the Seahawks kind of coming down from their championship highs.
Yeah, the Seahawks are always going to be, while they're a good team, they're always a wild card because they either start slow and get hot or get hot and start finish slow. So the division's theirs for the taking. I think they, Seattle has a good defense, but if you ask me who has more all around pieces, it's definitely Arizona. When you have Honey Badger, Deion Buchanan, Patrick Peterson. You throw in Budda Baker, who can play corner, can play safety. Hassan Reddick, Chandler Jones, Mdici. They can get at the quarterback in so many ways. They could shut down the run game. No disrespect to the LOB, but when you can attack offenses in so many ways, I tend to think defenses like that succeed more than just your prototypical playmaker.
Yeah, and whether you get the LOB can say, oh, well, you're never going to throw against us because we're going to cover all your receivers. But if I put Russell Wilson on his keister, he's not throwing anybody either.
Yeah, and you know what? That's another team that has a lot of issues on the offensive line. And when you're in a division with Arizona's defense, and the LA Rams also have a pretty good defense. When you're in a division with top 10, top 15 defenses, and you have a turnstile offensive line, Now, granted, Russell Wilson is one of the most agile and mobile quarterbacks in the league, but when, like I said, with the Cardinals, when you can attack the quarterback in so many ways and have so many guys that can do different things, I mean, that's just creating a lot of chaos. So I can see where the A grade would come for them.
Yeah, so moving on to something else we can kind of give a grade. WWE Payback was this past weekend, so it's their first pay-per-view. It's a Raw exclusive pay-per-view coming out of WrestleMania. It's kind of their first introduction to the new wrestling year, as they would say. And coming off right at the start of the show, probably the best match of the entire night was the Hardys against Cesaro and Sheamus for the SmackDown title. Not for the SmackDown, I'm sorry, Raw Tag Team titles. And it had a lot of interesting moments. You had Sheamus actually physically kicking Jeff Hardy so hard that his tooth came out. You had Matt Hardy start to bleed. But in past weeks I've been kind of critical of Matt and Jeff, as my nostalgia has been like, oh my god, they're back, and me being like, they're kind of rusty out there. They don't look so good. They looked amazing. I mean, performance-wise was a grade A. Storytelling-wise, I mean, top 10. I mean, you had this great moment at the end of the match. The Hardys retain, and they shake hands with the other team. The Hardys go to celebrate on the turnbuckles like they always do. And Cesaro and Sheamus come over and throw them off the turnbuckles, beat the snot out of them, even more than they already have, and then just lay the titles on their like lifeless bodies. And it gives you this big moment where now you have another heel tag team in that Raw division, because Dash and Dawson are hurt. Dash is hurt. Dawson's just kind of sitting there. But they lost their heel tag team that they brought in from NXT. They need a new one. They turn one of their teams that could easily have done it, and you do it in the best way possible, because you beat up people that everybody already loves, and it's just kind of. And my immediate thought, and I know Lewis isn't here tonight, and he may agree with me, when they got beat up and Matt was on the ground lifeless, I was like, they're gonna break now. This is it. They're gonna have broken Matt after the Cesaro kicked him really hard in the head. But I think it was a great match. It was a lot of fun. The next match after that, I want to get your opinion on, Birch. Alexa Bliss beats Bayley in her hometown.
I knew you would get me on this one.
So for my rationale behind it, I didn't like it at all. I think it's way too early. I don't like it. I think you could have gone, if you want to give the shock and you want to take something away from Bayley in front of her home fans to kind of build up her like babyface character, I think Sasha turning on her would have been the way to go. I like Alexa. I have nothing against her, but I just don't think this is the right move to make her champion. So
I got to be honest. We were talking before we went live. I have done a poor job in keeping up with WWE, just with finals work and everything, but trying to read up on some of the highlights. I knew you'd pick my brain on Bayley losing, and I know Lewis would have a ton of jokes if he was here, so thank God he's not saving me another week of this. I guess the idea is that you want to keep building up this baby face that she loses in her hometown, and her hometown's going to rally behind her, and now the WWE universe will rally behind her because Alexa's the heel. I'm just going to play devil's advocate for the hell of playing devil's advocate. I like it because I think Bliss adds a really strong heel persona, because you lost Charlotte, and I think Charlotte was and is one of the best heels that the women have, whether or not she goes face in the future. So to kind of bring Alexa over and have her now don like the heel woman. Now, I'm not saying that there's not, other heel wrestlers that they have, but for her to kind of be the big challenger to the babyface, I like, because I think both of them put on spectacular matches. Just look at NXT. I think they've had a couple matches where they killed it and really, set the place on fire. So, like I said, just to play devil's advocate, I'm, as much as I love Bayley, I was shocked to see them strip it from her so quick. I thought maybe she'd have it up until SummerSlam, or really even to the end of the year. But if you want to keep building her up as the baby face of the women, have Alexa beat her, and now, have the WWE universe rally behind her.
Yeah, I mean, you could have him rally. I just didn't like that the whole hometown angle was such thrown in. But and I like it. It's in her hometown. Acknowledge it. Don't ignore it. But I thought the hometown is when she had said, "Oh, it's in my hometown" and all that other stuff. I immediately thought this is the chance for Sasha to turn on her. How do you make someone the most hated heel? You beat up the biggest babyface. How do you make that even 10 times worse? You beat her up in her hometown. Like,
Yeah, I mean, look at how many times WWE, throughout the years has had Orton get his ass handed to him in St. Louis, or Cena gets his ass handed to him in Boston just because he's from the area. I mean, there's ways to do it, but I do see your point. Taking the title from her in her hometown might have been a stretch too far. I just think they dropped the ball with having Sasha turn heel. I mean, don't you? Because I think we've been talking since the Rumble that Sasha would turn heel and turn on Bayley and solidify herself as the legit boss and the whole heel thing. I mean, I just feel like they kind of have now botched turning her heel. Like you've had her face for too long. It's like now there's not even a point.
Right, and I think that was the biggest chance you had. It's almost like when CM Punk wrestled John Cena in Boston. It was like, how do we make the people boo him? Put him in Yankee pinstripes. Yeah, they'll boo the shit out of him. Like, this was the ultimate moment for you to walk in there and Sasha to be like, yeah, I run this company. And, like, maybe she does lose the title to Alexa, but it should have been through Sasha screwing her over. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, because that's a more of a storyline that while Alexa is
like,
good in her own mind, it's now like you're really taking a jab at the babyface with having one of her best friends stab her in the back.
Right, and now you have this independent woman's storyline that doesn't resolve around the title that you can have going into SummerSlam, where you have a classic Bayley versus Sasha SummerSlam match that blows the roof off the place one more time.
Yeah, definitely. Because you could even have it as a triple threat if WWE wanted to. Title picture.
I think they're going with this image of like Mickie James versus Alexa Bliss because they've been teasing that for a long time. So if they want to have Mickie versus Alexa, that's fine. But I would have much rather seen Bayley versus Sasha at the same time. Because now, if you want to elevate that women's division, have them have two rivalries going on at once.
Yeah, because now, well, you bring up a good point because now it's like, well, what the hell do you do with Sasha and Bayley? Right. I mean, they're both in their own mind, or in their right mind, I should say. A+ wrestlers, especially for the women's division. So now do you kind of throw? And it's no disrespect to Alexa or Mickie James. I mean, I'm one of the hardcore Mickie James fans still, but. It's like, well, what do you do with the other two now? I mean, it's great that you have Alexa and Mickie going at it, but going forward, WWE has a lot of cool events over the summer. I mean, you got Money in the Bank, most notably, and SummerSlam. So it's like, well, do you kind of push Sasha and Bayley to the back burner?
I really hope not, because
you
want to start selling seats again? That's how you do it.
Absolutely. I mean, and not even speaking as one of Bayley's biggest fans, but she draws a lot of, the kids and a lot of the crowds. And Sasha, same thing. I mean, she draws memorabilia and all that. So, I mean, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what they do with this whole angle going forward. And especially now that you have, Nia Jax is still hanging around too. So, how do you incorporate these women to have more meaningful matches if they're not in the title picture?
Start putting storylines together that aren't in the title picture, but they'll never do that because it's a male-dominated sport sadly for the most part. So we'll move forward to the next match. They had a Cruiserweight Championship match, Neville versus Austin Aries, and thank God Luce isn't here to boast about AA's package. Neville retains, but he did so in a way that made me extremely happy because it was him establishing him as a heel, because he didn't win through a pinfall or submission. He won through interfering with the referee and the ref calling off the match. So Austin Aries technically won, but Neville retained the title.
You can't take the belt off DQ, yeah.
Right. So I think for me, it was a perfect way for Neville to retain, to build up that storyline, keep that storyline going, but to not have it be stale and boring. Because I think Neville is secretly one of your best storytellers inside of that ring. You watch that match and you watch Neville physically get frustrated with what was going on. He was, Austin Aries would keep kicking out of things, and Neville was getting more and more pissed, and he couldn't hit moves, and things weren't putting him away, and Austin Aries was getting after him. And then all of a sudden, out of like utter frustration, when Aries puts Neville in the last chancery, Neville grabs the shirt of the referee and throws him, causing him to end the match. And it's like this big spite thing, and Neville rolled out of the ring with this big grin on his face, knowing exactly what he did. And I think not a lot of people give him enough credit. And I want to ask you this kind of as a side point. I was reading articles that said that the cruiserweight division is failing as a new division. And I want to get your opinion on that, because I think, for me personally, it's not failing at all. I think it's come in and done exactly what it's supposed to do as this almost side show, this non-main show, almost like an NXT sort of thing that we can just watch for fun, and it puts on fun matches. What do you think about that? Like, is it a failing effort in your opinion?
I'm shocked to hear that because, a lot of people, and, the three of us especially, have bitched that Raw is really the same product every Monday night. They've done a good job in the last couple of months of trying to spice it up with storylines, with, some people coming back. But I don't think they've done enough to market and promote the cruiserweight, because, I mean, if you watch it, if you just give it a little bit of time, like you said, you're getting exciting matches. You're getting guys that are just flying around, giving it everything they've got, sacrificing their body, for the match. And you have so many personalities too. I mean, I just don't see how it would be failing. I mean, quite honestly, I would adverse that with saying that WWE's failing with it, because you kind of just slap it into the middle of Raw with these cruiserweights popping up. They should honestly have their own individual show, not affiliated with Raw or SmackDown, if you ask me.
I mean, they have their own show, but it's like it's only an hour long, and they have to appear on Raw at the same time.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is give it more time. Give it more of a running time, and give it more in-depth storylines with some more wrestlers.
Would you rather see them get off Raw and only solely be on 205 Live?
Yeah, because I think the problem is
not have their own pay-per-views, but maybe jump onto the NXT pay-per-views.
I would do that. I would support that 110%, because I think the problem with Raw is people are there to see Raw. You're there to see the Raw superstars. I mean, the casual wrestling fan or the older wrestling fan isn't really going to care about the cruiserweights. Like, we love it because, the storylines are fantastic, and they're generally littler guys, throwing themselves around. I think if you want to create more of a buzz and excitement to it, let them do their own thing on 205. Let them have their own show with like a 2-hour runtime, and then maybe they kind of creep in with the NXT pay-per-views. But the one thing I wanted to kind of quickly chime in with Neville is, one of the things that WWE always does and has always done is you generally see a wrestler go heel and then they go face, heel, face, like they flip-flop. I hope that Neville stays face for the rest of his, heel for the rest of his career. It's not that I didn't like him as a face. It just wasn't going anywhere. But him as a heel, he sells it, he markets it, and he plays it so well. And
I think he can go face again, but I think it's not gonna be the same face that he was.
I would hope not.
I think because there's those different degrees of face. You know what I mean? There's those pure baby faces who will always do whatever. Yeah, there's the Cena baby faces, but there's also your Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose faces, where they don't do it all for the crowd, but they're still good guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think Neville could fit very well in that category, where he has very story-driven matches, but also, just entertains the crowd. He's not trying to, do fan appeal for his entire segment.
Yeah, no, I can agree with that. I have really, really grown to love him as a heel, and just how he sells it on these promos, and even his demeanor in the ring is just it's so far and beyond much better than what he had when he first came in.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll move forward to the last two things I want to talk about for Payback. They had the House of Horrors match, which is an interesting idea. If you, like you said, spice things up. It's never bad to throw in some new ideas here and there. So you had Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt actually fighting in a pre-filmed location before Payback even was on live. And it kind of almost struck me, and the immediately first thing I had was, it was almost like WWE's version of the Broken Universe, where Matt and Jeff would have matches at their house. Because essentially that's what it was. It was them fighting in this abandoned house. I'll be honest, like I had said, the storytelling from WrestleMania between the two of them was fantastic, and it had worked out really well because the wrestling wasn't A plus, but the story that they were trying to tell was there. I didn't get it this time. You know what I mean? I was thoroughly confused the entire time as to what I was supposed to be feeling about this match, because they're fighting in this house. Randy's beating up Bray. He's almost on top of him the entire time. And then all of a sudden, Bray throws a refrigerator at him. Randy falls down, the refrigerator lands on top of him, but then rolls to the side, because it's obviously not a real refrigerator, because he'd kill a guy like that. No, but it like lands on him, and then it rolls away, so you're like, oh yeah, he's fine. And Michael Cole's screaming about how he's pinned under a refrigerator, which just isn't true. And then, Bray gets into drives off to the arena, and it seemed very stale, very played out. It was a good effort, but it didn't seem realistic, because as soon as Bray got into the ring, and they were like, oh, I wonder if Randy's going to make it back in time. And I was like, well, no shit, he's going to make it back in time. They filmed this a week ago.
Yeah, reading up with what they were planning to do with the House of Horrors, I kind of thought that they would try to make it almost like a horror scene in the ring, not doing it
and it wasn't scary. It wasn't. It looked like you went to a house that was under construction in the middle of the night, and you just ruined some poor man's work.
I guess they were a little fearful of getting too scary with, obviously WWE, one of the biggest demographic fan bases is the kids. But I had thought that maybe they would kind of recreate like the compound in the ring, and then have it kind of be like what they did at WrestleMania with those screens. I kind of thought that they were trying to get a little edgier with the match. So, I did catch the highlights of it, and it for me was just extremely unenthusiastic. I mean, it was dry. And I actually was one of the biggest fans of this feud for the last couple of months. I thought, like you said, the storytelling has been great. Orton is a savvy vet, and Bray, I think, does a fantastic job with promos and in the ring. So, when I saw the highlights of it, I was like, well, that's what they wanted to do. I mean, right. You had about a month to plan this, and this is what you came up with?
The house idea isn't a bad idea. I like them fighting in the house. I think it works really well. But you got to let Bray go nuts. You got to make it scary. I feel thoroughly disgusted by everything that's going on.
I just don't think you can throw a refrigerator at somebody and have that believable. Because, I mean, like you said, you obviously, if you throw a refrigerator at somebody, if you have the strength to do that.
Well, yeah, if you actually throw a refrigerator on top of somebody, they die.
I'm pretty sure that was on 1,000 Ways. I'm pretty sure that was a scene in 1,000 Ways to Die. Like somebody. Yeah. So I mean, unless you're Braun Strowman and can pick up a refrigerator with ease, that to me was just so unbelievably bad. Like WWE does things sometimes. Go way back.
If you want to hit him with a fridge and he falls down, that's fine. I believe it. Fridge is hurt. But you can't tell me that he's pinned under a fridge with a camera guy and nobody called anyone.
Well, it's like WWE has always gone above and beyond with certain things. Like, remember years ago, Stone Cold blew up Vince McMahon's limo, and everybody thought Vince McMahon was actually in the limo and died. Like, I mean, that's a little more believable, because I guess Stone Cold just hated Vince McMahon so much that he took his life, and some people actually believed it. But
you filmed it from far away, and you couldn't really see who got in and the editing was done well. So Vince got in. It was a quick cut, so you didn't even realize it, and then the limo exploded. But the worst part about this was
it's like
the refrigerator bounced off of him. It falls to the side. I see Randy laying there. And they're just like, Randy's pinned. I'm like, what? No? Get up.
It didn't make sense to me. I mean, I'm sorry. Randy Orton to be 6 feet under as far as I'm concerned, if a fridge is on top of him.
Either Randy's dead, but if they wanted to sell the fact that Randy was seriously hurt by that fridge, don't have him show up to the ring 20 minutes later. Like, Randy,
exactly.
If they have like Randy disqualified because he doesn't show up to the rest of the match, then I think you sell it, and I just go, holy crap, Bray Wyatt killed him. Like, but the fact that he still showed up 20 minutes later, looking fine with no internal bleeding, and RKO'd him, I was like, this is dumb. This is all dumb.
I mean, yeah, look, sometimes WWE can get away with things that are dumb, and it's like, at least it's funny and laughable. This is just like, you had a refrigerator on top of you, and you're walking away fine. Like, at least when Braun flipped the ambulance with Reigns in it, he came in with, like, crutches and bandages and, a broken rib or whatever. At least, I'll give him credit.
I stubbed my toe in my bed and I want to limp for the next 3 hours. Randy Orton has a fridge fall on him and he's fine in 10 minutes, and I don't believe it.
So, I mean, yeah, we could go on and on about how just unbelievable
I'll just name all the things that hurt me and that make me unable to walk for about an hour and a half, and none of them include a fridge.
No, I would hope none of them do.
Because if I have a fridge land on me, I'm a deceased man, and you'll all see me at my funeral. So I want to go my last thing. This is kind of like a gripe topic I have, and this is just a personal opinion. The Samoa Joe versus Seth Rollins match, and we all kind of love Seth Rollins. I don't think it's a hidden fact. Everyone loves him.
Well, we do. I just don't know if Lewis does. You can never get like a confirmed opinion if he loves Rollins. Like you and I do, but I feel like he likes Rollins, but it's like he's there. But when you bring up Styles or KO,
Lewis only likes men who wrestle in shirts. Let's just be honest.
And heels.
Yeah, well,
like full blown heels, not like that teeter totter.
Yeah, heels that don't respect children. That's about it. But I want to talk about the last 2 matches on pay-per-views Joe has had. He's been great on Raw. He's been a great storyteller. He's been, kind of doing what he has to do to get his point across, and he's great on the mic. But in the last 2 matches, he had a match against Sami Zayn on, I believe it was the show before WrestleMania. It was Fastlane.
Yes.
He had his match with Sami Zayn. And then this match with Seth Rollins at Payback, the dude looked lethargic. Like, it was slow. It was painful to watch. I checked Twitter 4 times during that match because I was so bored. It was,
and that should say a lot for our viewers, because whenever Seth Rollins is on TV, like you and I generally are glued to it because he puts on matches.
Right, and so there's this big story where Seth is injured, and I should be so intrigued, and I was going into this match. And then Joe's like just lackadaisical. He's stumbling around. It reminded me of the Jeff Hardy match where he was too high to fight Sting in TNA. That's literally what it looked like to me. And it was slow and painful, and of course they have a half an hour slot. So Seth is essentially wrestling a broomstick for half an hour, and this destroyer is supposed to be dominating him and beating the crap out of him. And his big "I'm gonna beat the crap out of you" move was, "I'm gonna put you in headlocks and like chokeholds."
Yeah, I don't.
He has a hurt knee bars. Throw his knee against the ring post. Throw his knee against the outside of the ring. Throw his knee against the table. Drop your knees on his knee. Like, there's so many stuff that I would have done as if I was a performer to tell that storyline, and I was watching it going, where the hell is the Samoa Joe that I used to watch in NXT when he used to fight Finn Balor? Because that's not the same guy out there. I'm pretty sure you pulled a wool over my eyes and you got a different fat guy to get into that.
It almost was like the antithesis of Samoa Joe. I mean, you look at this guy, he is the destroyer. I mean, he's the prototypical big Samoan guy who just throws people around, chain wrestles really well, and just has like a ton of power. I have to go back and watch that one because that's another one I just read up on and just got the basic synopsis.
I'll give you the review in 20 minutes. Me and Troy wrestling each other, but neither one of us really want to hurt the other. So it's just a lot of holding hands.
That's unfortunate because, I mean, aside from the fact that, he has wrestled through injury and it has slowed him down, Seth Rollins puts
Rollins
on
is the best
fantastic matches.
Rollins is the best because there's Rollins on one leg trying to do the usual moves.
Well, what I was going to say,
Joe is lethargic.
Yeah, what I was going to say was, Rollins generally puts on exciting matches regardless of who he's with. So the fact that Joe, you're telling me didn't rise up to the occasion and kind of feed off of that is extremely surprising, especially for somebody like Samoa Joe. Like if this had been, I don't know, Titus O'Neil, then it would, whatever. Then life goes on. Right, life goes on. But the fact that it's a household name like Joe is it's almost disturbing to me as a wrestling fan. That when I looked at the card, I was like, Rollins and Joe. I mean, two fantastic competitors and athletes in their own regard. To hear that it was lethargic, I mean, is extremely disappointing.
It's two ROH legends going up against each other in the WWE, and that, like, when you have two independent legends that have faced each other in the independents, gets me excited. You know what I mean? Because these are guys who have worked together before. They know how to put on good matches. They know how to do it, and they've wrestled in the similar promotions, so they know each other pretty well. I mean, I can't fathom the idea that this is the same Samoa Joe that I used to cheer for in NXT, because it's not. It's literally not. After watching Payback, I actually went back and I watched his matches with Finn, and I watched his matches with Baron Corbin, out of all people, in NXT. And I watched it and I just went, man, Samoa Joe is running around the ring, sentons, and doing insecurities, and throwing himself all over the place, cannonballs. And I look at it now and I'm just like, it's like watching Big Show wrestle, except Big Show is 7 feet tall, so I give him credit because it takes a lot of energy to move his big frame. Like, you're a big guy, but you're not Andre the Giant size. Let's move a little. And there's Corey Graves saying how good of an athlete you are, and I'm like, shit, throw me in there. I could do that. You want me to stumble around for 35 minutes? Yeah, I could do it. How much are you gonna pay me?
They might pay you in fajitas.
I'm down. You're gonna tell me I get to punch Seth Rollins in the face, work for fajitas, and I get to be in WWE TV? Shit, man, it's like Christmas in this household.
There you go. Well, I know what to get you for Christmas: a WWE contract based off of fajitas.
You would have me in Matt Bloom's training session immediately. So moving on from a scripted sport, because otherwise I'm just gonna get mad at Samoa Joe and he's gonna come after me. Over the weekend, the NHL draft lottery happened, and me and Alex were actually together for this. As I said my prayers, and I went to church for the first time in 5 years, to pray that the devil somehow got the first pick. God finally answered my question.
Real quick, before you go any further, we actually, the three of us, the jackass who's invisible right now.
He's crying with Noah Syndergaard's arm.
We had actually. I just cannot see that man performing any type of medical miracle, even with crying. Even with tears. But we were out for dinner, and before we had gotten the news, you were talking about, oh my God, if the Devils get the first pick, first off, my dad being an Islanders fan, I'll be pissed, but I'll be so happy. And then lo and behold, dessert comes, and then I get the notification the Devils got 1 and the Flyers get 2, and I was like, hey buddy, you got number 1, and I think you started to choke on your food because you were in such shock.
Well, because both of us, you guys jumped up the most out of anybody, jumping up 11 spots.
Well, we were projected to go 13, 14.
Yeah, and so we're projected at 5. I think we were projected at 5. We had an 8.5% chance, and I was like, you know what? If I get 5, not the worst time in the world. I mean, I have stockpiled prospects for the past 3 years. So to add another one, not the worst thing that's ever happened to me. The last time we were at number 5, we selected Pavel Zacha, who had a pretty good season this year. So I'm okay with it. And then we got number 1, and I was like, holy crap! I don't know what to do now. I figured for the next 6 years I was going to be on a losing streak, Sixers style, until I got number 1. So it turns out I don't have to wait that long. So I want to ask you, though, there's one guy who's been kind of pinned as the Myles Garrett of this draft. Nolan Patrick, he's played in the NHL before. He's from the Brandon Wheat Kings, if anyone follows the Canadian Hockey League. He's 18 years old, and he's coming off an injury this year that has kept him out, which has made him kind of, if you look at some draft boards, it's made him fall to like 6 or 7 because people are concerned about what injury he had. So he didn't come back I want to run this by you, Birch. He didn't come back till January this year. All right, January 13th was his first game. So you figure the CHL season goes from January till about late April. So they just wrapped up.
Okay.
So I figure that's about how many months do you think?
Well, I'll give it 3. We'll just go average. Yeah.
3 full months of regular season play. They don't have his playoff points up yet. In 33 games, Nolan Patrick scored 20 goals and 26 assists.
Shit.
Averaging 1.39 points per game.
Wow.
And that's coming off an injury.
Wow.
So he had to so everyone else on his team is already heated up, warmed up, knows their role, knows their teammates, knows their line, and he's coming in, doesn't know. And he has to learn, he has to warm up, get his stuff together, get himself back in, that mindset, know his line mates, learn his line mates, and and he's still putting up these numbers. That to me says that's top pick. Right?
That to me says I hope the Devils pass on him because I'm at number 2 and need that kind of production.
So I want to say this. In his career in the Canadian Hockey League, he played in 163 games. He has 92 goals and 113 assists.
Yeah, I hope you guys pass on him. Let that be enough of, a background on the guy for me to hope that he gets passed on so he falls to the Flyers.
Well, I also want to say this. He has connections to both the Devils and the Flyers.
Shit.
Because when he was with the Brandon Wheat Kings, his line mate in Brandon a year ago when he was first drafted by the Devils, Johnny Quenneville was his line mate, who was recently had his rookie debut in the Devils this year. His defensive line mate, Provorov, who just had his Flyers debut this year. So they immediately asked him, because he's kind of the first overall guy, which would you rather go to? And he said, his quote is, I don't know, but I already have a roommate when I move in. So
yeah, I saw that.
My question to you is, this is a guy who can literally turn around a franchise. I mean, that's 92 goals in 163 games.
That's unreal.
Insane. And he's high school age. This isn't Sidney Crosby putting up those numbers. This is a 17, 18-year-old kid.
Yeah, I mean, look, my concern now that we get to talk a little bit more hockey, the expansion draft's coming up, and the Flyers have just been extremely lethargic the last couple of years. I mean, I've talked to you and I've talked to Lewis together, and on separate occasions, Ron Hextall has done a great job adding a lot of talent through the drafts. I mean, you look at Provorov, you look at Travis Konechny, you look at Anthony Stolarz as a goalie, and the plethora of defensemen that we've added, because one of the big things when Hextall took over was that the Flyers blue line was old and decrepit. But the one thing that this team has severely lacked is that type of production, like you said, coming from a forward. I mean, Wayne Simmons and Braden Shen will get their own. Claude Giroux is not a goal scorer. He's an assist guy. He's a setup guy. Jake Voracek can give you 40, 50, 60 points a year. But, to have that kind of production, I mean, yeah, that literally is turning around the face of a franchise, whether it is the Devils or, it is the Flyers. I mean, that's unreal. I remember the hype that Crosby and Ovechkin got when they were coming in.
And this kid has no hype behind him, and that's what
and that's a shame because when you read off those stats, I mean, if I were the Flyers, I would Bears it.
Well,
why don't you swap with the Devils?
I want to read one more thing with you. I want to read one more stat.
Okay.
In their championship season, when he was playing with Provorov and Quenneville, when they were all together before anyone was drafted, this kid at 17 scored 41 goals.
Oh my God! The Flyers haven't had a 40-goal score since.
Well, I mean, obviously he's not going to drop 40 in the NHL just yet. But
no, but to have that kind of pedigree, Yeah, but to have that kind of pedigree is earth-shattering. I mean,
so would you like to see the Flyers trade up for him? Because I mean, the Devils have been known to trade back before, because we do need a lot more than you guys do.
Yeah, here's how I rationalize it. The Flyers have right now they have Provorov, the big defenseman right now. So when you look at the rest of the team, you better be concerned about keeping somebody like Wayne Simmons around with the whole expansion. I absolutely would keep him because he's a do-it-all player for the team. Braden Shen, obviously Travis Konechny, rookie, had an up and down year, but I think he'll have a good second year. But you look at the blue line, you have Provorov, you have Gostisbehere, and then you look to the minors, you have Samuel Morin, Robert Hagg, Travis Sanheim, Felipe Myers, and like two other guys. And then they have about three other goalies who were killing it in juniors. So, with that being said, what's the one thing that I left out? Scorer. They don't have a prolific scorer. So, yeah, if the Devils call the Flyers and say, hey, we'll swap picks, but it means you giving us, a second round pick and maybe a future first or something like that.
If you want to give me Hag, I'll give you the whole pick.
Well, look,
like I said, Nolan Patrick, I'll have my defense back.
Right. I mean, like I said, if the Flyers want, and I brought this up on one of our shows, maybe like 4 or 5 shows ago, but if the Flyers want scoring, I've always felt like they have to probably part with one of their defensemen, and they have a ton of them. So Flyers fans, don't start sitting here saying that, in panic because they would conceivably lose a defenseman. They have about 6 or 7 of them. So losing one's not going to kill them. And if you're getting a player with that kind of production when this team needs a prolific goal scorer that can take the pressure off of Simmons, Shen, Voracek, and Giroux, then yeah, I'll swap you. I'll throw you Hag, and I'll throw you a third round pick too.
Yeah, and not to say that the other guys that are coming up in the draft, below him are bad. They're not at all. These are all guys who have led their, obviously, for those of you who don't know the CHL setup, they're actually in 3 different leagues. There's the OHL, the WHL, and the QMJHL. The top 3 picks from the Canadian Hockey League all were MVPs last year in their respective leagues. So it's not like you're losing, any spots.
I'm just, I mean, when you read off the stats and when I think about what the Flyers need, they need goal scoring in the world. They need that guy. The Maple Leafs have Austin Matthews now. The Oilers have McDavid. The Blackhawks have Patrick Kane, and the Blues have Tarasenko. But the Flyers, when you talk about goal scoring, well, Simmons gets you some, Shannon gets you some, Voracek will get you some. They don't have the guy that stands above and above all, who can do everything in terms of, 30, 40 goal scores a year. That's what this team so desperately needs. And I'm telling you, if the Flyers wind up with him, it's only going to do so much more for guys like Simmons and Shannon. It'll take the pressure off of them because, I mean, look, you're going to have to worry about this kid because, he's coming into the NHL. It's a much different ballpark. But with that kind of pedigree, I'd be more worried about him than I would about some of the other guys.
Well, I just want to read off the guy who's predicted number 2 for you.
Okay.
And his name is Nico. I can't pronounce his last name. He's from Switzerland, so don't even try. But he's in the past season in the QMJHL, he played the entire season. In 57 games, he scored 38 goals with 48 assists.
So that's almost about the same.
It's about the same. These are the 2 guys who are kind of figured for the top position. They're only saying that Nolan Patrick is better than him is because no one knows what Nolan Patrick could have done if his hernia hadn't acted up. So, I mean, either way, you kind of end up with a top player. And, I'm excited about this draft because this kind of launches both of our franchises back into that top spot. And we can finally start challenging again. And if all the rumors are true and Zach is thinking about coming home, this may be the time, Zach. I'm pulling in the number 1 pick.
Well, and with that being said, too, I think now's the time where, at least 1 or 2 more of these defensive prospects need to come up because, Samuel Morin is 6'7", 225 pounds, which is just massive for a defenseman. And one of the things the Flyers need is they need a little of that bully back on Broad Street. They need to start hitting people. They need to start moving the puck a little bit more. And, look, if they get one of these 2 guys, it sounds like they're going to get a prolific goal scorer, which is what they needed. So, and obviously, it'll be another conundrum with the goalie situation. But, let's get that blue line and let's get that score going.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with it because everything points towards me getting, both of us getting one prolific score, and it just points to the fact of we could probably look at free agency a lot differently when you bring in the number one pick, kind of like how Edmonton did and Toronto did this past year.
And look at that. I mean, they both propelled dramatically with McDavid and Austin Matthews. I mean, it wasn't obviously it took Edmonton about a year.
Well, I mean, you look at Toronto, they literally got him, turned it around, went to the playoffs.
So, I mean, hey, if that's the omen, then let's get this thing moving because Flyers, like I said, Flyers hockey's been extremely boring lately.
So going on from one winter sport to the other winter sport, we're in round 2 of the NBA playoffs. We had made our predictions last week, a few weeks ago. We had talked about it a little bit last week. We're going into it now. We are in round 2. I want to hear your predictions. Starting off in the East, Boston, Washington. Who you got going on?
Boston.
I mean, Boston's up 2-0 already, but is there any chance John Wall puts it together?
No. And it's no disrespect to John Wall, but it's Isaiah Thomas is playing with such a chip on his shoulder, and I think the team is starting to rally around him that I wouldn't be surprised if they swept. But my mind says 5 games. I'm going to go 5 games.
All right. Toronto, Cleveland. Now, I've been critical of Cleveland because they did rest their players and they looked lazy coming into the playoffs. They showed back up against Indiana. They swept them in 4 games, but each game was a struggle. Each game was not as close as the 4-0 would have made you believe. Who do you think is going to pull out? Toronto, who had to struggle and fight off a tough Milwaukee team, or Cleveland, who kind of steamrolled Paul George and kind of almost forcing him to go to a new home?
I think this has a 6-game feel to it, but I'm going to give it to the Cavs. I just don't think the Raptors have anybody to match up LeBron. I mean, DeMar DeRozan's a good player, but they just don't have anybody to. You're never going to shut LeBron James down, but to at least limit him and force the ball to Kyrie and Kevin Love. I mean, the Raptors have a good lineup, but I just don't think that they're as strong and as deep as the Cavs are. So my gut has to go Cleveland. And I've disrespected them once enough for them to prove me wrong, so I'd rather just say
You did say
Cleveland
Paul
now.
George would have taken it to him, so maybe you should just Houston versus San Antonio. Now, these are 2 teams that hate each other, just to start off. Now you're talking about Greg Popovich going up against the guy who's fighting for an MVP vote. They haven't officially come out and said it yet. He's probably the top 3 contestants for it. James Harden leading the Rockets against the Spurs. Who do you think is going on? Houston already won game 1.
I know, and that surprised me because very rarely do the Spurs drop a game 1. But LaMarcus Aldridge, if he doesn't show up in games 2 and beyond, then I think the Spurs are screwed. I mean, Kawhi Leonard's a fantastic player. I think he's one of the top 5 players in the league. I think you could even throw him in top 3, top 4. But he's going to need a little bit more ammunition because the Rockets are deep. You've got Beverly, you've got Harden, and a lot of rotational guys that can come in and shoot. But just given pedigree and who they're led by, I got to give it to the Spurs. It's almost impossible for me to count the Spurs. I mean, you and Lewis know whenever the playoffs come around, I'm always want to say the Spurs are going to go the farthest because, Popovich and, the leadership that they have. But this absolutely, without a doubt, has 7 games written all over it. It's going to be so back and forth.
It's going to be back and forth, and you can never really count Popovich out, and I expect them to return big in game 2 and take 1 back. But, I mean, if James Harden wins game 2, I'll say it right now, it would not shock me at all for him to go home to Houston with this series and kick the crap out of him. Because if there's one thing Popovich can't do, is he can't get Houston's crowd to shut up. Because you're talking about a rivalry game. This is a rivalry game. So you want to talk about think about in any sport, when 2 teams that hate each other meet in the playoffs, they yell. So, and Harden's only going to feed off that. He's been doing it forever. He's going to feed off that emotion, and I just don't think that if Popovich doesn't turn it around in this next game, it wouldn't shock me if Harden just steamrolled him because he just had he had the entire city of Houston behind him.
There's a good chance, but it's so hard for me in any situation.
I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but I'm saying if it did, I'm not gonna count it out.
Even if they were down 3-0, I just can never count out a Popovich team.
Yeah, absolutely. But, this isn't the Popovich team that he kind of built, you know what I mean? Yes, he did get Kawhi Leonard, but he didn't draft LaMarcus Aldridge. It's not those days where he used to, draft his entire team and he used to just sit there and he knew exactly what each player brought to the table. I think we're kind of ending that era in the Spurs' history. And I think coming into it, even just because he just took out Russell Westbrook, Harden's riding a hot hand and he's riding a lot of emotion that can take him pretty far if he uses it the right way.
Oh yeah, and he's the kind of player who easily, no matter who he faces, can drop 40 or 50. So I mean, and the Spurs can throw everything they've got to stop him, but like I said, the Rockets are a very deep team with a lot of rotational guys that can hurt you in so many other ways. So it's definitely going to be a 7-game series, and it's going to be exciting.
So talk about the last series right now. Golden State versus Utah. I'm big on Utah. You know it. I love me some Utah Jazz. Golden State takes out Portland 4-0 after Damian Lillard makes some insensitive comments. Utah, almost shockingly, I mean, I had called it, but, a lot of people said the Clippers that, Lob City would take out Utah. Utah takes them out in 7. Do you think, I mean, it's almost kind of assured that Golden State's going to win. They just have too many weapons. But do you think Utah takes them to 6, maybe 7? Kind of using that.
6, I think. I think
using
6
Rudy
would
Gobert in a place like that.
I think 6 would be the ceiling. I think 5's more likely. I mean, they're too young and inexperienced when you go up against Steph, Draymond, Clay, and KD. I mean, I wasn't surprised that they knocked out the Clippers. I mean, the Clippers have a lot of problems, and maybe we could save that for another time where I just bitch about the Clippers. But
that's our NBA draft.
Yeah,
NBA
but
draft conversation.
Utah they're young, they're passionate. They've got a lot of guys that can hurt you in different ways. I mean, you talk about Gobert being 7-1. Derek Favors in his mid-range game. 5, I think, is more realistic because maybe they steal one where they can catch Golden State on an off night, but when you have Steph, Clay, Draymond, and KD, and going up against an inexperienced team, I mean you're in trouble.
Well, I want to ask you this: we had talked about when we had first started thinking about the NBA playoffs when we first made our predictions that this was a year for Gordon Hayward to prove that he deserved that big contract. Is it better or worse for Utah the deeper they go into this tournament? To lose deeper in, does this make Gordon Hayward want to leave and go to a championship team because he's kind of tasted it now, or does this make him stay in Utah and say, if we keep doing this, we can definitely make it?
Well, I mean, the way that I would look at it is, I would feel more content with the team I'm at going farther, if that makes sense. Like if Utah had gotten knocked out in the first round or not made the playoffs, then Gordon Hayward says adios. This obviously isn't going anywhere. But the fact that they won a playoff series and the fact that, let's just say for the sake of the scenario, they can push Golden State to 6 or 7, then I would have to believe Gordon Hayward turns around and says, hey, you know what? Look, you've got me, you've got Favors, you've got Burke, you've got Rudy Gobert. Let's go out, let's grab a free agent, let's have a good draft, because then maybe they can win 2 rounds next year, or maybe they could even push to the Western Conference Finals. I mean, but I think the farther that the Jazz go is better for Gordon Hayward staying in Utah than it would be if they got knocked out earlier or had not made the playoffs at all.
If they had lost that Game 7 to LA, do you think that's his audition tape for LA? Saying like, hey, listen, you beat us, let me join you?
It could have been. But I still think LA would have gotten mollywopped by the Clippers. So, I mean, they can't get mollywopped by themselves.
Well, they could. They've been doing it for years.
By the Warriors, I meant. But I don't think anybody's going to be. If you want to talk about anybody joining the Clippers, if I can get my 30 seconds of ripping the Clippers in, ain't nobody going to be joining the Clippers. That team's breaking up. they're done. I think that entire team needs to be redone.
Don't tell Melo that he just bought his condo.
No, I don't see what good it would do. I mean, what good is it going to do? You know, Chris Paul is one of the top players in the league at his position. Blake Griffin, one of the top players at his position in the league. You know, same goes for DeAndre Jordan. But beyond that, it's just a bench. You know, you've got about 3 guys, and then you have a bench. You know, and I wouldn't be surprised if teams start paying the big money to get JJ Redick because he's such a deadly 3-point shooter. You know, when I look at the Clippers, I just can't see them going anywhere in the West. And that's a damn shame because I thought that this was going to be their year, that they would finally put it together. But if I'm betting on anything, all 3 of them, or excuse me, 2 of them, Chris Paul and Blake Griffin are going to jettison out of there.
I mean, hey, we'll see what happens when all
this
is wrapped
break
up.
This down. I am prepared on going on a rant about the Clippers.
As soon as they start announcing the NBA draft lottery, you can hear from us then about what the hell's happening with all these teams.
And then we can start talking more about the Sixers and, you know, that whole thing coming together.
No, you can talk about the Sixers. I'm going to sit back and just watch. So we'll talk. Last sport we'll talk about tonight is Major League Baseball. We missed them last week. It's our weekly baseball update. Right off the bat, Birch, congratulations. You guys won 12 games. And it's before we hit June.
Yeah, hey, you know what? This team, they swept. I'm sorry, who did they sweep? I have to go back and look. They got swept by the Dodgers, but which I mean I guess is fine because it's the Dodgers. They swept the Marlins, which is whatever. I mean, it's the Marlins. Lost 3 to the Dodgers. Pounded the Cubs on Monday 10-2, lost 8-3 last night to the Cubbies, but they're up 2-1 right now. I don't know. This team just has like a new feel to it. Like they're hitting. Some of the younger guys, like Aaron Altair, is really stepping up at the plate. The starting pitching has actually been solid, and ever since they've demoted Jeanmar Gomez and Benoit from closer and given it to Neris in more of like a rotational type of feel with the closer, it's almost like now this team is starting to play a lot better. You know, they're not relying on the long ball. They're relying on just getting hits, putting guys in runners in scoring position. They're scoring them. The pitching is at least holding up. So, I mean, again, this isn't a playoff team, but to see this kind of energy and this kind of feel with this team is definitely starting to get me a lot more excited.
Yeah, I mean, good for the Phillies to kind of do the unexpected this year. You're in second place right now, 4.5 games behind the Nats.
It's very early yet.
It's very early, but, you know, if you had said to me at any point during the season when we first did our predictions for the year that the Phillies were going to be in second place at all, at any point, I would have slapped you. I would have slapped you hard.
I would have laughed at it too because, you know, they have a lot of questions yet that still need to be answered, but to see this kind of fight from this team, you know, one of the common themes with the Phillies over the last couple of years is if they were down in a game, or even if they were up in a game for that matter, they would blow it. You know, there have been several games this year where they have battled back or where they have held on to, you know, close games. So to kind of see that, like the old 08, 09, 2010 feel in that regard that they can hold on to games is at least starting to get me a little bit more optimistic for the future.
Yeah, so the Yankees are going in at 16-9. They're playing right now, so most likely it's going to be 16-10 because the Blue Jays are still pretty good.
Blue Jays have been awful this year. I don't know what's going on with them.
They're not the last 2 days. Have you seen the things that they've done to us?
Yeah,
but touched violently.
They're 9-18. They have just been,
but they're also still the Blue Jays. Let's be honest. They're 9-18 because they got to play the Orioles, the Red Sox, and us.
Well, hey, speaking of Orioles and Red Sox, have you seen what's been going on with that whole thing?
I mean, that they're beating each other up and making my job easier. It's fantastic.
Well, Adam Jones and the whole racist comments that he faced at Fenway,
that's a whole different thing. Let's be honest. I was not shocked. They're all dirtbags, all of them. Each and every single one. Well, hey,
you know what? I'll say this. At least Boston's finally getting the national media's attention, and Philadelphia is only getting praised after draft weekend. So me as the Philadelphia fan could finally sit here and say at least the national media hates somebody else.
Yeah, someone else is getting yelled at, and rightfully so. They're dirtbags, and I don't like them at all, and that's all I'll say about it. Because otherwise, I'm gonna get real mad.
Yeah, but I do at least give the fans credit to kind of support
when
Adam Jones, because look, it's like when you guys joke about Philadelphia, you can't blame an entire fan base for a couple of jackasses' actions.
Oh no.
I mean, you'll have your opinions on Boston because you're a Yankees fan, and that's all well and good because that's a 100-and-some-year-old rivalry. But to at least see a couple jackasses make the comments they did to Adam Jones, but see the entire stadium give him a standing ovation when he came up. I mean, you got to tip your cap to that.
No, I'll make all the jokes about Boston that I want, and I'll rip them apart because I jokingly don't like them. But having gone to Boston before and been wearing a Derek Jeter jersey while I did it, and sitting in that stadium and being at a Yankees Boston game, and every time a player gets up and someone booed, the fans genuinely great people. Just we had a good time. We joked around. Yeah, did we rip each other apart a little bit for players and stuff like that, and whatever it was, but. I didn't meet a single person who was genuinely mean while I was there, who was being mean for the sake of being mean. And the fact that some people, regardless of fan base, went out there and tried to tear him down with such low blows, you know what I mean? There's a level of dignity that is supposed to be upheld, and especially in baseball. You know what I mean? In football, I think, and basketball, and not in hockey because they just are punching each other. But if in football and baseball, in football and basketball, we kind of hear these comments made and these people calling each other out, and they're saying terrible things to each other, and you've had brawls between fans and players before and stuff like that. But in baseball, it's almost like this gentleman's game. You know what I mean? And
it's America's pastime, and it's just
right.
The thing that really kills me is we have a lot of not to go political, but we just have a lot of racial issues as it is now in society. I mean, why bring that into sports?
Yeah, it makes no sense to me.
Sports is that escape from reality. You're having a bad day, you flip on a ball game, and you just crack open a beer and you relax. I mean, that's to see this
not for
going.
Most of us. Every time I sit down in front of a Devils game, my blood pressure spikes.
Yeah, I feel about Eagles games, and but.
But regardless of sport, I mean, there's always been situations where, I mean, you talk about tennis. I mean, you want to talk about a more polite goddamn sport than tennis? But Serena Williams goes into places and people make monkey noises at her.
Oh, it's.
There's a point where all fans, if they ever do that, disgust me. You throw in bananas at. There was a player,
Wayne Simmons.
In Brazil. Well, not just Wayne Simmons. I mean, recently, there was a player in Brazil, a soccer player, who went to a game and the crowd of his own team threw bananas at him for poor game performance.
Yeah, I mean
that's just disgusting. I mean, there's
I mean, a couple years ago, the Flyers were in LA, and LA fans were throwing banana peels at Wayne Simmons. I mean, obviously, it doesn't take a rocket science degree to know what that's implying.
Right, but, and in this world of where people are saying we have to get rid of the name the Redskins because that's offensive. Can we first stop making fun of people that are trying to play a game and make a living? Can we do that first? I'll insult any Eagles player, any Cowboys player, any Flyers player, any Rangers player, but I'll never insult them because of their race. I'll insult them because they suck at hockey or
that's
whatever
just
they're
common
playing.
sense. I mean, and it goes to what I said. I mean, sports for a lot of people is escape from reality. I mean, it just is. It's fun. It's supposed to be fun. While it's competitive, it's all in the name of the game. And to see that done, I mean, and you know what the thing is too is Adam Jones is a guy I highly respect. I mean,
probably
he's
one of my favorite people that isn't a Yankee because he's just
he's a community guy. He's a great kids guy. He does a lot for Major League Baseball and their efforts with pediatric cancer. I mean, that's just low. And I'm not sitting here blaming Boston and the city of Boston.
It's whoever decided that was a good idea. That's your fault. The only thing I blame the city of Boston for is for that terrific ovation the next night. I mean, they've had a history of it, and I fully expected Derek Jeter's last game of his career was in Boston. I fully expected terrible things to be said about that man, and all they did was clap. And I hats off to them
that
for
just
that.
shows you, like,
And
you know,
the Adam Jones thing only further pushes that idea that they're great people, and I think that a few fans just had a little bit too much to drink and let the game get to their head way too much.
Yeah, and I mean, not to pound on this issue because I want to get you to finish up your Yankees and the Mets, but I honestly I think people like that should never be allowed back to any sporting event, not just baseball, but they should be banned from attending any type of professional sport because society has an issue with it, like I said, and it just does not need to be brought into the world of sports.
Yeah, if you're gonna make those kind of comments, just go sit at home and do it. You wanna make racial slurs and throw bananas at your TV? I'm not gonna see it, so I don't care. But it's just there's no place for that in a public forum like that where there are kids around too, and now some poor kid in Boston might think that that's okay. And
exactly, that's terrible. That's the biggest thing is kids are going to see that behavior and they're going to think, oh well, they'll go to school and they'll say because I saw this guy in row Q doing it because he was trying to be funny and now I'm trying to be funny. I mean, it's just a bad example and it's a bad precedent.
So we'll come back to we'll kind of leave the Yankees alone because we're not really doing much besides either hitting home runs or striking out because that's our job. But we'll talk about something that shocked me, and we had said that when we first tackled baseball that this was a team that was going to be in first. So we're a month into the season now. The Mets are 11-15. And you can say, yes, their list of injuries goes on and on and on, and guys are going to come back, and, the team will get better. But they just lost arguably their best pitcher. Noah Syndergaard is out with he tore his labrum. So that's not like
lat.
Oh, he tore his lat. Tore his lat.
Labrum, he'd be done.
Yeah,
he'd be shut down.
He tore his lat. But I mean, it's still a serious injury. Still pretty bad. This isn't like I broke a finger, and I'll be good in a week. This is pretty bad. And my question to you is, I mean, neither of us are Mets fans. We're missing our one Mets fan who probably could defend them in this situation. What do the Mets need to do? They're in dead last. They're below the Braves. I mean, the Marlins have shining moments because they have a great outfield and a great infield, but they're below the Braves, who literally couldn't buy a game to win. What needs to happen for the Mets now? They've lost your ace. You're losing. Your prospects are hurting as well. I mean, and you've lost a lot of guys in that infield. David Wright is hurt. Jose Reyes has had troubles hitting. What is next for them? What do they have to do to either keep that championship season alive or just let it go?
It's, I suggested a little while ago to Lewis that maybe, now's the time to package a couple of your prospects to get another hitter and another bat in an already solid lineup. But, when I look at even some of their prospects are hurting, this just seems like something you just have to ride through. It would be tough to give up prospects and get a bat and then, maybe that bat winds up getting hurt because that just seems like it's the Mets' luck. But I feel like now's the time maybe where they want to call up a couple guys and see what they've got. If I'm going to put on a Mets fan's hat for a second, just to be fair, I would rather see them stay put and just kind of ride through the storm. Maybe that means you kind of fall out of the race for the next month or so, but, they're still a good enough team where, this division is not overpowerful other than the Nationals. I mean, the Phillies, Marlins, and Braves aren't going to go very far. So, to panic and start trading for veterans because, you think you need a couple of Band-Aids, it's only going to hurt you more, no pun intended, in the future. I mean, like I said, their only real competition in this division is going to be the Nationals. So, I would have to think that, just stay put, be patient, ride it out. You're definitely going to still be there in June and July. Maybe if a couple guys get healthy, then maybe you want to make a deal with the July 31st deadline, go for it. But, right now to panic just because a couple guys are hurt, I think would absolutely cripple them going forward.
Well, here's the thing, and I want to throw this. I'll play a little bit devil's advocate here, putting on my Mets hat. It's very old and tattered. But I want to say, it looks like David Wright's pretty much done. There's reports of him throwing and playing again, but he's not David Wright anymore. He's almost like, just the third baseman you have because he's a legend, and you're like, I want him to retire in this jersey. That's all I want. That's all he's here for.
Right. It's similar to the Ryan Howard situation. I mean, we all knew he was done. He was never going to be that 40 home run, 120 RBI guy, but you kind of just kept him because of the nostalgia, and you hoped that maybe he could give you some flashes of the old 07, 08 Howard, but it
was over.
Yeah, it was done. It was time to move on.
Yeah, I figured David Wright's pretty much done. Jose Reyes is not a guy that's going to carry that position for many, many years. You're looking at your pitching staff. It's going to become time to start signing some of those guys very, very soon. You just lost Syndergaard, so it's going to make his negotiation actually a little bit easier because he's not going to have the full career list of numbers that he could just throw at you. But Lugo has been hurt. Gazelman has actually done pretty well. I'll give him credit for that. Zach Wheeler has not been what was advertised.
Well, he's been out for
2 years
about
now.
A year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah, he's been about 2 years where he hasn't been pitching healthy. He hasn't been as good as advertised. Now that he's back, you're looking at TJ Rivera, who's their first baseman prospect, hasn't played as well as advertised. They still have Dom Smith in farm system baseball.
Ahmed Rosario.
Yeah, they have some guys down there, but the guys they've been calling up have not been playing well. Michael Conforto is not the elite outfielder that was kind of also promised. He was supposed to be like kind of the replacement for Granderson when eventually he left. He's decent. I'm not going to say he's bad. He isn't at all. He is a very good baseball player, but he's not going to be your guy that's going to be the stable foundation player. And I kind of relate him to like a Melky Cabrera kind of guy.
A solid player, but he's not overpowering.
He reminds me of like a Melky Cabrera, Adam Eaton, Charlie Blackmon, guys who have been outfielders forever, but just weren't elite. They were just there.
No, they get the job done.
And Cespedes' contract is gonna, you're gonna have to worry about the Cespedes money if you want to keep him around. I know Jay Bruce, but Jay Bruce has been productive, so I'll give it to him. Bruce.
It's an interesting situation.
Going into the next month, which in June you're gonna start hearing trade talks come up because you are hitting that. It's almost deadline time. It's time to start voting for All-Star Game already. For me, if I'm a Mets, all front office guy or a GM, I got to start thinking about taking prospects or taking players before they kind of turn ice cold and turn them into some things. I think this is the time to move Wheeler. I think this is the time to move Matz. I think this is the time, because you are going to get Lugo back. It's not like Lugo's arm came out of his socket and now he's pitching with the other side. Gazelman and Lugo can step up. I think it's time to start looking for some guys. Maybe trade for a third baseman. I know Machado is a stretch, is a long shot.
I think if you're talking about Machado, that would kind of be, I think, the Mets waiting for, what is it, next winter when the big names come out?
Right, it's next year where it's him. It's him.
Harper, yeah, Machado, Harper, Kershaw, McCutchen.
But even then, you can go get a Jung Ho Kang from the Pirates. You can go look at a young Harvest Solarte from the Padres. You can look at a few guys out there that have some significant upside that are not going to be career players. This isn't going to be like you're getting Chris Bryant, who's going to play third base for the next 20 years. But you're going to get somebody who is going to play third base for the next 5. And in the next 5 years, you can draft a third base prospect that is going to take over that spot once they're done. Let's be honest here. As much as I hate to say it, the Mets are a championship caliber team if they're all healthy. And I think right now you need to take some of your existing pieces, move them for potential all-star players, and kind of make sure because like Ed Lewis had said, they came up to this season saying, we'll take the same team that failed to the Giants last year and we'll try it again. And I think that this is the time to change it up because, especially now, you have injuries all over the board. Start changing your formula up because if you don't, you're only going to lose more games.
Yeah, I think for me it would be time to hit that button if come late June, early July, they're still in like third or fourth and they have, a couple of injuries. Then I would absolutely say,
They kind
take
of
the
are.
year.
They kind of are, because almost now that Syndergaard's gone, it's 1 out of 5 guaranteed games that you're gonna be in a battle for. Plus, you got the Gazelman games because he's not elite yet. He's still learning his ropes.
Yeah.
And then you got the Wheeler games that are fights. So that's 3 out of 5 games a week that you're fighting for because your pitching isn't there. It's an uphill battle, and I think you need to jump and capitalize as fast as possible. As soon as those trades start opening up, start firing away what you can get.
I see what you're saying, but I think they do at least have a little bit more wiggle room to stay patient. I mean, who's to say that if they give up on some of these prospects, they get a veteran and then that veteran goes down? I mean, there's so many what ifs.
You're always gonna have to play the
injury
game, but
yeah, I just think that with some of the talent that they have, and they really do have a lot of talent, pitching and hitting wise, that just stay patient. Again, this is a very weak division. I mean, don't let the Phillies fool you. They're not going to the playoffs unless Aaron Altherr all of a sudden turns into Mike Trout, which I don't foresee. But your real competition is going to be the Nationals. I think given what they've done the last couple weeks, they're probably going to win the National League East. So there's still the hope of the wild card if your guys can come back and stay healthy. But I think for me, if it's late June, early July, and they're like third or fourth, then I absolutely would say, take the year off, make some trades, look forward to that 2018 free agency, because that's when like a dozen of the big names hit. Maybe you can get Machado, who's only going to be, I think, 24, 25.
Yeah, no, he's going to be 20. He's going to be 25. He came in the same year as Harper.
So, if like you said, and like Lewis said, they're trying to almost compete with the same team they had last year that got knocked out by the Giants. So, if July comes around and deals are thrown their way, then I would say, yeah, take it, especially if you're sitting around 3 or 4 in the East.
Yeah, I mean, my rationale comes from the Nats went out and got better. Granted, Eaton just got hurt and he's out for the season, but they went out and they got better. The Marlins went out and tried to fix whatever holes they had, some of the holes they had. The Phillies went out and tried to, make sure their farm system was ready to go, and with their call-ups. Every team went out and got better, and it looked like the Mets stayed kind of stagnant. Maybe now that injuries are causing your stagnant team to fall apart, time to inject some new blood into it, whether it's young or old, just to see, what can happen. Because, yes, there's a chance of those guys, those veterans, getting hurt, just like the regular players, but there's also a chance they start producing, and they could maybe turn that team into a third or second place team by the time everyone comes back, and then they can push for that number 1 spot and try to not get knocked out against Madison Bumgarner in a wild card game.
Yeah, I mean, there's always what ifs. There's always pros and cons to each, factor with how you shape a team. But I just think with some of the talent they have, just try to ride it out the next couple of weeks. And if the wheels really start to fall off, then yeah, I would say, take the year off and just see if you can inject some new blood and make some trades and just shake up the core.
If you ever need a kicker, I know an undrafted free agent, Louis Schaefer. He can come kick the ball towards other batters and see what happens.
Hey, why not?
I played a lot of Mario baseball back in my day, and I'm pretty sure at least one of those guys kicked the bat. So whatever.
Just new rules in baseball.
Hey, listen, if it worked in Angels in the outfield, it can work here. That's gonna be our show tonight, guys. Thank you guys for listening in. Please like and subscribe. It really helps us out. Read our articles on feedmesports.wordpress.com. I believe Birch just put up his brand new article on the Eagles NFL draft and what they did. So you want to read that?
No. Yeah, next week we'll probably get in a little bit more about the Giants and Eagles draft. I think this week we definitely wanted to try and cover more teams rather than just our hometown teams. So
once camp starts opening up, we'll talk more about the guys who are going to actually make the team.
Yeah, and one thing I kind of wanted to throw out, I know I didn't run it by you and Lewis, but to our viewers, if there's anything you want us to write about or talk about specifically, feel free to comment on the Facebook and Twitter or on the YouTube page itself. We definitely will take requests
just to see what you want us to.
If you want us to talk about, old baseball players or why the Mets suck and why Lewis just likes to stir the pot and get everybody angry, that's fine. But
if you want me to talk about the MLS, I mean, I'm down. That's just
I think you and Lewis would have to do that. I'd have to take off that week. All I know is
Lewis doesn't know anything. Lewis knows Zlatan Ibrahimovic. I'm doing a show by myself if that happens.
I know Alex Morgan and Julie Johnston because she's married to Zach Ertz and Megan Rampino. So women's soccer.
None of them play in the MLS.
No, it's still soccer. Damn it. But but yeah, if you guys want us to talk about anything or want us to write about anything on our site, just feel free to comment on our Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube page.
That being said, follow us on our personal Twitter if you want to tweet at us anything, any questions, anything you want us to talk about in the next week's podcast. Follow me at Roman the Weekend. Follow Birch at Birch_beer.
There it is.
He'll get mad at me if I say it wrong again. And follow Lewis Schaefer at Schaefer500. And just make sure to wish him well as he cries over Noah Syndergaard's arm. See if the tears have made it healthy again.
I actually just got word that a support group is going out to visit him over the weekend. Bring him some canned goods and some candy. It's just a really tough time for him. Noah Syndergaard is like Carson Wentz to me. I mean, it runs deep, man. It runs deep.
I thought about I had $5 extra and I could either donate it to the Red Cross or Noah Syndergaard's arm. And I figured Noah Syndergaard's arm could use it more. So, that's where my money's going. Maybe you guys could help out with that if you feel so empowered.
Well, I'll send him a get well soon card, and it'll probably just go into the piles of all the, hundreds that Lewis has sent them in hopes of like a signed baseball or a meeting.
Lewis has lied that he's 12 years old and he has a life-threatening disease to get a baseball signed back.
Oh, good Lord.
That being said, guys, thank you for tuning in, and tune in next week to hear more from us all about all sports and all wrestling as well. So thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time.